Great, well, welcome everyone. You are at tonight's Katona Museum of Art's Artist Talk with Beatrice Scaccia and with our curator, Emily Hanlon, the Associate Curator of Exhibitions and Programs. At the end of our event tonight, it will be dedicated to questions from the audience. To submit questions, which you are welcome to at any time throughout the event, I will direct you to the bottom of your screen where you will find the Q&A function. You can submit your questions there for the artist, or the chat function, which is there as well. If you have any Zoom technical questions or would love to comment on what you're seeing, you can also direct that to the chat, which we encourage you to do. And now I will pass it off to our Executive Director, Michael Gitlitz.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Michael Gitlitz, and I have the pleasure of serving as Executive Director of the KMA. Thank you, Michelle, for organizing this evening's program. I would like to welcome and introduce our guest artist, Beatrice Scaccia, who currently has an installation at the museum in our spot gallery, My Hope Chest, and who will be speaking this evening with our Associate Curator of Exhibitions and Programs, Emily Hanlon. Beatrice lives and works in New York City. She was born in the town of Veroli in central Italy and earned an MFA at the Accademia di Belle Arti in Rome. She has had solo exhibitions at Rico Maresca Gallery and Artists Alliance Incorporated. And her work has been featured in exhibitions at American University's Katzen Art Center in Washington, D.C., wonderful museum, and most recently in the exhibition Homemade at Magazzino Italian Art in Cold Spring, New York, which if you have not been to, you owe it to yourself to go visit. Her work is in many important public and private collections, including the William Louis Dreyfus Foundation and the Portland Museum of Art. Emily Hanlon, Assistant Curator of Exhibitions and Programs at the KMA, is the primary curatorial staff member here and received a PhD in the history of art and architecture from Brown University. And she's taught at Brown, Eastern Connecticut State University, and Trinity College. She's held positions at the RISD Museum, the Peabody Essex Museum, and the Tucson Museum of Art before joining the Katona Museum of Art. Welcome, Beatrice, and welcome, Emily, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Michael and Bea. Thank you so much for being here. It's so lovely to see your unmasked face. As Michael mentioned, you created this really lovely stop motion animation called My Hope Chest. And for your installation in the KMA Spot Gallery, you also hand drew these incredible wall drawings to accompany the animation. And I know that this installation, the stop motion animation and the drawings have this really deeply personal resonance. Can you talk a bit about the work and the personal experiences behind the symbol of the hope chest that you use?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Michael, for the introduction, and thank you, Emily, for everything. I will start by saying that I believe visual art, at least the one I make, has not many clear answers, but a lot of questions, because I believe in the creative process that is mysterious and imaginative, because achieving that makes me closer to a deeper self. That being said, we are, of course, what we live, what we experience, and my childhood and the way I grew up, of course, means a lot, because most of the memories are from that period. So I grew up in a very small town in between Rome and Naples, from a simple family. And my reality was unsophisticated and very provincial. I had these important figures while growing up. They were my two grandmothers. and they were traditional and religious. So I remember talking about the topic of my animation. I remember when I was around 12 years old, 13 years old, big boxes of items began appearing in my bedroom, and they were very fancy, and they smelled great, and I wasn't allowed to open them. And it was explained to me by my grandma that those were items I would have used later in life once married. And my bedroom was tiny, and I remember these boxes took a lot of my space, and I couldn't get the urgency and the meaning behind it. And also, my family was simple. We didn't have money. So I remember like my grandma kept paying month by month for this hope chest for my married life. And so that's the strong memory I have about it. So when I go back to Italy fairly often, before the pandemic I used to, and this tradition is still present, even if in a different way. And it was mentioned something about my niece that is now 4 years old, about maybe she could end up using my hope chest because it's still there. No one got to use it. So I began playing with the idea, and I began thinking about making a work with it. And I began researching, and I found out that in other areas in the world, because it's really a tradition that covers a little bit every part of the world, there were actual huge boxes called chests that were containing items. So visually, these boxes reminded me of a coffin. So I play with the idea of this, harmless box in the animation. And this puppet coming up and down from the box, almost closer to a Jack in the Box toy. So there is that performance. And we can go to the next slide the next actually. So this is the puppet, and that's the hope chest, the box I made. And I like to dumb things down, so to make things very simple, because I'm more interested in the atmosphere I create around the narrative than the narrative itself. So the character actually reenact really simple actions that are, like cleaning dishes and organizing clothes and being caring with sending kisses and dancing. And he ended up exhausted actually from these performances. And so the hope chest is actually an excuse to talk about something that is deeper, and it's very present in Italy. Italy is a country that is charming in many aspects and warm, but it's also really cruel. And women are still, the role of women is still very much, at least in some areas in Italy, connected to your role inside your family and how you can take care of your family. So I really struggle with that reality, and it means a lot to me because I still have part of my family there, and I have this younger niece. So I think about her and how she will grow up in that small, unsophisticated and simplistic reality. And so it's the gender issue in Italy. It's really important, and it's probably the main reason why I moved here. Because I really didn't feel like I could be myself completely over there. So this animation is deeply important to me because of that. And I don't know if we want to go over and talk about the process itself more.
Yeah, let's look at some more pictures and then a little clip of the animation too.
So basically it's my studio setting while I made the animation. So I built the stage and I chose the lighting and everything to make the project. And it's a very painful technique. It takes a lot of time, but I'm really satisfied with the result. But if we go a little bit to the images, so these are basically what I like in general in my work is working with the opposites. So I found that this interesting combination, because while the puppet moves in a really simple, almost naive and childlike way, the background I could be very experimental and work more like a painter. So I didn't plan too much. I planned the quotes and the phrases that come out, the words, but I didn't plan all the effect that I chose to add, from the stripes to the dishes that appear and everything that is in the animation. And that the background really gave me a lot of satisfaction, because it gives the right atmosphere that is in between. I like working in this liminal zone of no longer and not yet, where identities are always fragments and nothing is too clear and too literal. And
you get a great sense of that from the animation. Can we watch it and then come back? Great.
Are you crazy? Yeah, hold it, woman. Think of him as a stranger.
I find the puppet so moving, and it's so expressive. Just the smallest kind of movements somehow convey this emotion. Can you tell us a little bit more about how it was made?
Yes, so stop motion animation, it's a very painful technique, I would say. It's something I started out of curiosity, because I like the physicality of it. You know, you have to build a stage and a puppet, and you have to pick the lighting. And for a person like me that is obsessed with the performative existential aspects of everything, like I feel we are all performers, that's a technique that's really intriguing, of course. But when I started doing that, I have to say there were moments in which I would just get out of the room and say, I don't want to do this anymore, you know, because it just, I think I shot 30,000 frames. I ended up using 22,000 frames. And my studio room, I will show you later, but it's very small and I couldn't do anything else. So I was in the dark all day long. But I think that being so inside the animation actually made the work stronger, because I really, at one point, I was such in a zone, I couldn't stop. And making the movement fluid, it takes a lot of learning. So I made some kind of a reference video of me moving in that way, so I could actually understand how to move the puppet. But one of the most interesting thing was picking the lighting, because I don't care for realism in my work. It's something that doesn't agree with my choices. So when I picked the black lighting, I didn't think about the background, and then I had to choose a background. And actually the handwriting, it's fascinating how the best thing happened out of necessity, because I don't know how to edit. I'm a beginner, so I thought, oh, how do I write the title? I don't know how to write the title. So I thought, oh, maybe I can write it while I animate with the background. So I put the background to write just the title and my name and the year, and then it was there. So I began playing with it. And so the coding started thanks to that. So it's interesting to see how a technique that is used by professional, when used by an artist, end up being something different, because you have so many limits and you have to learn how to use your limits. And then I think the animation, it's nice to see like this, but I think in the spot gallery, the experience get so much more immersive because of the wall drawings. I think we have some photos of them.
Michelle, can you go to the next? Thank you.
Maybe the next one with the details. Oh yes, this. So I basically painted a fake frame around the projection, and I added all these elements that are connected with the topic of the animation. So there are piles of clothes, and there are mirrors, because mirrors is a vanity symbol, and there are glasses and plates and shoes and accessories, because I think I'm very interested in the symbolic meaning of everything. So every work I make has different layers. So the first meaning in this, it's the hope chest, so the gender issue and the role issue. But behind that, there is also this idea of the archetypes. And among the archetypes, I like the trickster and the shapeshifter, because they are never the same, and they carry, in particular, the trickster carries very heavy messages with a playful and ironic behavior. So I think my character in this animation is kind of a trickster, because he looks so naive and so cute, but it's actually telling us something very important. And the drawings around it are all leftover of the character and leftover of identities in general. So they have a very existential meaning to me, because what stays of us, it's always what we cover us with and not ourselves. So it's
details further of the wall drawings. Michelle, can you go to the next?
Yeah.
So we can appreciate these.
Oh yes, that's without the so I made these I think I used the same creative process I used for the background in the animation. So I did have an idea of the elements I was going to add, but also thanks to you and Michael that just let me be, I could have a really important experience in that room, because I worked in a completely imaginative way, and I added elements that I thought they were necessary, but without having to rationalize too much. So I love it. It was the first time I could work in this way. So I'm really pleased and really grateful too.
I have to say, I've never seen somebody focusing so intently for so long as you were when you were up on that ladder in the spot gallery. It was quite incredible. I would try to ply you with water and coffee, and you just said no usually. But yeah, and for those of you who are watching who haven't been to the museum to experience this, it's really, really, and I can't emphasize this enough, worth the trip, because it's, as Bea said, this completely immersive experience. It sort of feels like you yourself are within this hope chest, this confined box, sort of watching this puppet, and it's incredible. So Bea, you mentioned this experience with stop motion and how you're a beginner, even though I can't quite believe that you're a beginner watching this movie. How has this experience with stop motion influenced the rest of the work you've been doing? I see one of your paintings, your new paintings behind you. Can you give us like a little tour?
Of course.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see. I should say, first of all, that after the academy, I was so after a couple of years, I finished the academy. I was so overwhelmed with the amount of respect I had for painting that I had to stop painting. So I drew for many years, and my first solo show in Rome and some of the shows I had here were mostly based on work on papers and short animations, digital animation, nothing compared to the stop motion. And but then I think it was the end of 2019, I really realized I wanted to go back to painting, also because, you know, like my topics deal with fluid self and this idea that also the gender is performative, everything can change. So drawing really doesn't agree with it, because you cannot change much in a drawing. You cannot change your mind. You have to start over. Instead, a canvas allows you to do so much on it. It's a completely different experience. So I was ready to go back to painting in 2019. And then I got this grant for making the animation, so I could buy so I began working on the stop motion animation. And then I have to say that in particular, the lighting and the mood and the atmosphere I was able to create with the stop motion animation stayed with me. So I really wanted to translate that in the paintings. So when I finished shooting and I began working on the paintings, then I think there was a very important aspect I wanted to carry with me. And of course, when I went to the museum to make the wall drawings, I had many months of painting. So I think things are all connected with each other. So I'm working on this composition of wigs and garments and leftover, I call them leftover of humanity. So this is a big painting that is still in progress, and as you can see, I'm adding this very logical lighting, and I think that's what the animation did to me. And then I'm gonna rotate the stool to show you. But basically, I mean, I'm surrounded by many of these, and there are many more around the apartment. But so I don't know. You can see.
Yep.
So they're all structured of hair and wigs and hat, and they have hands. This is one of the last one I made. Can you see it?
Yeah.
I began experimenting. I was trained as a realist painter. So I began experimenting with both acrylic and the spray. And I find that combination of technique really perfect for me, because I tend to be very sharp when I paint, and the spray gives me a little bit of a mood back and the atmosphere back. And then I think painting, it's all about losing and finding again the shape you're trying to make. So there is the play that always happens. So you make something and then you destroy it and then you remake it until you're satisfied with it. And the spray really helped me. And because of the hope chest, I began using fluorescent sprays. So I need to dumb them down a lot because they really, and that allows me to work more on the painting. I'm really happy with the new series, so I keep going. As you could tell from the how I work at the Spot Gallery, when I'm obsessed, I just, I don't stop.
Yeah, incredible focus. Michelle, can we go to some of these? We have images of
Oh, yes, of the painting.
paintings, so maybe we can look at them more closely. Yep. And these are more just
Details of the works.
yes. So here are.
So there are some, of course, that are not in the room now. So I made all of these in a few months, and I think I like how they look all together too, because they. I keep telling this, think of the archetype, because it really matters to me. I'm trying to build my own version of a feminine archetype, a genderless archetype. I think symbols are very important, and it's important to have a fresh eye on them. I think I like for my work to be vulnerable. Actually it's a choice, because I'm tired of art that is not, that tends to show all the opposite, to be unapologetic and strong. I like my work to be kind of lost in this vulnerability and fluidity of the confusion of the gender and self and identities and the roles. So these are all composition I actually make. So I bought a lot of wigs. I will not show you that because they look kind of creepy, but they are hidden. So I buy wigs and I compose them with other things, and I look at them and I take a photo, and then I start from the photo to play with it. It never stays the same because the colors are completely different, the shape changes, but that's a first reference I need to start working.
And can we go on to look at these more closely?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, just these details are so incredible.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, this one of the hair, to me.
Yeah, these almost 18th century wigs. What is the significance?
Yeah, I think it's it's partially what I studied and what I see, and it's partially also my again my background. So I think there are some let's call them elective affinities that happen with some visual works, and you cannot even tell why that happens. So I do remember, like, when I saw William Hogarth etching of the wigs, I got goosebumps. I couldn't believe it. It was something I really wanted to be with for a long time. And then there was Lorna Simpson work wigs with all these combination of wigs on the wall, and even then I was obsessed with it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And Domenico Gnoli work with hair, somehow still I got floored. I wanted to stay there. So I don't know how to explain why that happened. To me, it's mysterious, and I like that he stays mysterious. But I do believe that there is also something connected to my background, and that's partially what I say also in the animation. No, there is the puppet combs her hair at one point in a very not pleasant way, let's say. And as you can see, I'm very curly, and I was curlier when I was a little girl. And that didn't agree with my grandmothers, either of them, because they wanted me to be, well-mannered and quiet and behave in a certain way. And the curly hair wasn't part of the, their idea of me. So I would really, like, I remember on a Sunday before Mass, I would have to sit with my grandmother that would struggle to manage my curls. And she would always tell me to grow my hair, because if it grows, it get heavier. There was always this kind of, so it's gonna behave better. Instead, it was only white, to the point that I had a nickname. I was called Baobab by all my elementary school friends. But I didn't mind having curly hair. It was just something that was connected to this relationship, because, even if it's a part of you, you start believing that it's all of you, that not that it's wrong, but it's too much, it cannot be controlled. And I wasn't allowed to touch my grandma's hair. That was always perfect. So I think I've been having this fascination with, hair roller kind of shape.
Yeah.
Because that was her beautiful head. But also, like usual, when I discover I have an attraction towards some image, then I start studying about it. So I began studying wigs, and the history of wigs, and I began discovering that men were the first one to wear them. And then women came later, and even barbers and hairdresser were mostly for men. Women had to take care of the hair at home. Around, I think before the French Revolution, before they lost their head, like the Marie Antoinette had this huge structure, and they would put objects in it, like birds, and the photos of loved one, and even some controversial things. But to me, that's so absurd to think about it, that you have to build such a strong, uncomfortable structure in you to convey how powerful you are. And that's and so I began, and then the visual aspects of it are incredible, because it's beautiful to paint this kind of structure. And also hair, it's such an important symbol for us, because it survives us, and also because it can be strong and organized, and also it can break very easily, and it's so fragile. So I like this kind of opposite that contains, like usual. And I don't know, I think it's I think that, like, I like playing with this structure because of the meaning that is behind it, because they contain everything, and they are genderless mostly, because they can be, wigs were worn by everybody. And also I remember seeing a wig at the Egyptian Museum in Turin that is 3,000 years old, and it just hangs there, and there is nothing around it, and it's so metaphysical and so powerful. So these are all the visual things I connect to before making the work. But it's a bit of everything. It's memories, and it's your relationship with your body and your hair, and then art history, because I'm a nerd, so I tend to go study and research. And the more you research, the more you understand if that topic belongs to you or not. And this one does somehow.
It definitely does. Can we go to the next? I'd like to just look at more of these. I'm also reminded of that quote from My Hope Chest. I think this is from your grandmother too, that long hair is your crown, submission is power, which is, again, this kind of bizarre duality where it's your crown, it's sort of a symbol of power, but also submission is power, so
it's fascinating, because if you think about it, it really contains everything. Hair can express our freedom if you make it green, and and can represent our gender, our identity, but also the lack of everything. It can be, suppression. I don't know, there is so much around it. And I think as women in particular, there is an idea of beauty that is not around anymore. Now we are, far off from that. I believe, at least in New York, but it's still very present in areas, for instance, in Italy. There is, every time I go back, there is always some lady that suggests me, maybe I should straighten my hair down and let it grow. And, like, I'm over 40, but still, they just they give me that advice always.
Yeah.
It's still around in
It's
some.
interesting. Yeah, I also have a very sort of old school grandmother who has tried to get me to dye my hair since it started going gray when my early 20s. And every time I see her, she tries to get me to dye it. It's interesting how this is a generational thing, maybe. Michelle, can we go on to the next image? This combination of the spray paint and the sort of very fine, hard detail is incredible. The way those, again, opposites are coming together in these, it's really beautiful.
Because it's always, like I think I say that already, but I really love working in these in-between areas where things seems to be no longer happening or not yet happening, that there is no clear idea what the time is and what the moment is, and if it's I think the dream-like experience you can have with an artwork in general.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next, Michelle. Can you tell us a little bit about these hands?
Yeah, I think it's always about the duality. So a hand that touches hair or wigs can have such a dual meaning. It can be caring. That's the first thing we say, patting your head. It's a gesture that contains care, but it also can be very invasive. And so I like the visual aspect of it. I like, but it's also this idea that you don't really know what these hands are doing. If they are trying to bother these leftover, or they are trying to help. There is always an existential meaning behind my work. So I think hands and the hair and wigs together are all a part of an identity that it's not clear. So I can play with it a lot. And also visually, I really like the movement that they create in the composition, and I never overpaint them. They're always kind of ghosty. And they're a little bit everywhere. Even the act of painting itself, these structures, he had some meaning to the way I work, because I take time and care to build these things that are so empty. So there is something that agrees with the way I feel in general, because there is a void behind everything that we believe in. And I think taking so much time and so much care to build these, like genderless and confused identity really represents my work, even in the act itself. Yeah. Yeah, this I really made thinking of Domenico Agnoli. And one of his painting that has a detail of a bra. So I think even the title is connected with him. I really like his work, and it's one of my favorite painters ever. So, and it's always, I think the spray really helped me a lot to achieve what I wanted. And, it's not an easy thing to use because it's toxic and it creates a lot of fumes, but it's completely worth it, I think. And I don't know if there are more paintings. Yeah, this one. Yeah, this one is a painting I finished right before the end of 2020. So I felt kind of festive in a sad way. It was around New Year. And I like the idea of adding lights because I can create something that is even more absurd and irrational and illogic, because you really don't understand why the lighting and what's going on. But I also like the softness that the lighting has. And I think it's the only painting which I painted a little eye in the, yeah, in the figure. Yeah.
Mhm. That's great.
Yeah. It's always, it's, I'm trying to break the central composition now. But I kind of like how these empty structure look proud of being at the center of the composition. There is something ironic about it, and also deeply human. So I like that.
Yeah. That's great. When they're all together, it really is gorgeous.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the level. Yeah.
yeah, they're everywhere now. So,
How many have you done in the last, say, 9 months, 10 months?
I think maybe 17, 18. Yeah. And now I got bigger to the point that I bought these new canvases. This is pretty big. It's 72 by 60. And I couldn't even get it to the door. So I had to think about how to get it in. So I think I don't have sense of measure for sure on many different levels.
Yeah. So these are sort of an outcome of the pandemic in some ways. I mean, obviously it's been gestating in your brain for a long time, and it's, so interesting to me how artists have reacted differently to the pandemic. I feel like some people have found the kind of constant stress and uncertainty really stultifying and really kind of antithetical to the creative process, and other people have really loved the opportunity to just focus really closely on their artwork. How have you reacted? Clearly it's been a productive time for you, but what other ways have you found the pandemic has influenced your thinking, your productivity, your output?
It's an interesting question. I should start by saying that, of course, to have this conversation implies that I was lucky enough to keep some sort of stability, which I was, because I had my side gigs were consistent, and I had gotten the grant, so I was in a condition in which I could actually be thinking about the pandemic on a deeper level instead of living it in a dramatic way. Because I have many of my friends that were not that lucky, and of course, when you struggle with practical life and how to pay your rent and how to pay your studio, then you cannot make art because everything gets too heavy on you. But in Italy, the pandemic started earlier than here. My first struggle was, where do I go? I stay here and I go back to Italy. Maybe my family will need my help or not. And then I decided to stay. And I'm really happy that I did, because after the pandemic, there were other events that took place in this country, from the protests and the election and everything. And so I think it was an important year for me to build a stronger awareness about the place I decided to live in. And I don't think I had it before, because when you're an immigrant and you are, a real immigrant, I moved here after studying and I didn't know English much. And so I had to work hard every day. So you cannot make an excuse for yourself to be a little bit isolated and not too involved in the community and in the reality of the city you live in. And instead, the pandemic first and everything that happened later made me realize that I decided to live here and I have to be part of everything that happens here. So I studied and I learned a lot. And so I'm really happy. I think I changed so much during this last year about that. But the pandemic in itself was dramatic, of course. In my neighborhood, there were so many people online to try to get food, and so many people lost their jobs. But I don't want to get dark, but I will get a bit dark just to explain that for the kind of work that I make and for the kind of person that I am, not feeling safe, it's normal. You know, when I was little and I realized what life really was, that was, you know, short, I was going to end, I got so obsessed with time, and I always have this feeling of time running out, and I won't be able to learn everything I want to learn and make all the art I want to make, and be helpful for all the people I want to help. So this the pandemic actually was kind of just a reminder of our fragility for me. And I make art because of that. I make art because of otherwise I don't know what to be, how to be. I don't think I have, my identity is so linked to making art. And it's also the only way I can bear the reality of things. So of course the pandemic made me more focused. That's what I was going through, because um, seeing so much the fragility of everything around me made me realize that I needed my work even more. There is I think it's a quote from Nietzsche that says, we need art in order not to die of the truth. And you know, I think I make art because of that. So um, I didn't even think about stopping oneself. It's not that I make art all the time, but I think about making art all the time. So, and helping and being part of everything, but still, my work is very, very important to me, because I cannot, I don't think I could survive without it. Yeah, I answered the question.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you, Bea.
Mhm.
It was wonderful to get this sort of insight. And, you know, I've spent a lot of time with you, but I've learned a lot about your process. And thank you. We do have some great questions that have come
Okay.
in. Let's start with this one, because Christian says, thank you, Bea, for sharing your work and your thoughts. Bea, do you think, feel you may return to Italy one day? Will Italy and Bea ever be ready for each other? It's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm sure this is something you think about.
Oh yes, all the time. I'm really close to my brother and my niece and nephew. So sometimes I play with the idea of going back. But to be completely honest, every time I spent more than 1 month in Italy, I cannot. You know, like I think I moved to New York for the right reasons, because I wanted to be in a, you know, I wanted to meet people from all over the world. I wanted to be exposed to a completely different reality. And when you get used to that, it's really hard to go back. So sometimes I think maybe I could get closer to Italy, but not Italy. So maybe Berlin. So I, you know, England, but not England anymore now. But you know, some other places that have something of New York, but they are not Italy. There are cities I love in Italy. I love Turin, I love Milan, I love Palermo. But it's having a life there. It's a different story. Now I love Italy so much because I have the luxury of being a visitor. So even the things I used to hate, now they are more charming. Even the fact that things don't change or don't move, it's, you know, it's kind of charming to think, oh, I go back and I find the same things. But because you're not there full time, so it's a different story.
Right. Yeah, and you must be able to see it differently now as an outsider, sort of. Do you feel like an outsider when you go back, or do you
I
still
always felt
feel?
like an outsider, actually.
Hmm.
Yeah, so now I feel like a happy outsider.
That's a
Um,
happy thing
because
to be.
Yeah. And before I felt like I never felt I belonged there. I couldn't really understand.
Hmm.
The only moment in which I really loved Italy, besides where I was running around in the country as a kid, was when I studied art history, because of course
Right.
that you really enjoy, studying Caravaggio and going to check all the Caravaggio around.
Yeah.
That's a huge luxury to have. But besides those 4 years, then I go back to the Bado and
Mm-hmm.
go with it.
Hmm. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. Let's see. Okay, this one's great. I was wondering about this too. So the wig paintings are very erotic and to my eye surreal. What is your relationship to the history of surrealism? Speaking of art history and how you've kind of processed that
Mhm.
through your work.
I think I agree. There is some surreal aspects in my work, but I don't think I got influenced by surrealism itself, but mostly by one figure that is Alberto Savinio, that was De Chirico's brother. So it's more like the metaphysical than the surrealism, but they have so many aspects in common. So I remember when I began studying Alberto Savinio, it happened like it happened with other images and things that I felt that was part of me. There was something I could connect with the work a lot.
Mm.
So he plays with symbols and mythology and surreal aspects of it. He made these amazing, colorful toys in the forests.
Mm.
There was a beautiful show of his work, Cima, a couple of years ago. But I think there are influences that are more connected to that movement than surrealism, the French branch of it.
The surrealism sort of problematic relationship to gender too is something that,
Yes.
yeah, it's difficult there. Okay, this is also very good. Does your choice of medium from drawing in pencil or charcoal to using colored chalks and oils affect your choice of subject or the treatment of your subject? So I guess what comes first, your choice of medium or your choice of subject?
I think, yeah, that's a really good question. I think the medium is very important for the subject. So I have a feeling that my subjects have always been around the same ideas. I have to say, with the drawings, I limited myself for a long time because of the thing I was mentioning before, that you cannot change much. So you cannot spend so much time on one work to get obsessed with it. So I ended up, basically, when I was drawing, I would make some kind of narrative. So I couldn't think about one work. I had to think about the whole series to make it work.
Mm.
And I thought it was a strength for a while, but actually, people like it, but I felt there was always something missing in what I was making. I felt I was not completely accomplished with it. And now I can start painting, and one day goes by and I don't even realize it. I don't struggle with my creative practice anymore. So I think they're so connected. It's like like a medium teaches you something about your topic, and the topic teaches you something about the medium you're supposed to use. And then, of course, there is art history and contemporary art that you can relate to choose also your medium and everything. But I love colors. I'm a painter, so I really enjoy using colors again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. One more.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other personal symbols or motivations behind choices you make in the work, like the ones you referenced about your grandmother and your hair, that you'd be comfortable sharing? Um,
Oh,
I'm
I
sure you have a whole catalog of personal symbols, and maybe some of them aren't even the ones that you sort of consciously recognize. I'm sure things kind of make their way into your work all the time?
I think I don't have a clear answer for it. I know that even when I was working with the figure, I never wanted to show the actual flesh and the features of the figure. So I like this idea of covering up. So they always look, my work, they don't ever have anything that is actually human body. It's always like everything we put on ourselves. And I think that's something that connects with my personality too, because I really like to disappear. I like, I love winter time when I can be, behind piles of clothes and show all my eyes, and I feel so comfortable in that condition. And that I think this CD actually inspired me for that, because when you go out on a winter day and you go on the train, everybody's so quiet. They almost look like birds, in a nest. And I think there is some comfort in that condition. And because of my topics and the existential urges I have, I think that's a personal experience too. Something that connects to the way I feel things. I always want something between me and the world. Yeah, I don't know if I answer, but I don't have nothing comes to mind now more than what we talk about and this.
No, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. This has been really, really, really lovely. Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us. I know, again, I learned a lot and I hope you did too. And please come visit Bea's show and our main exhibition Still Live. Both of them will be up until the end of June. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.